What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the Hero Report. Welcome back to a brand new video on this channel where we talk all things Miami Heat basketball. In today's video, we're going to be talking about two players that have been linked with the Heat once more, and those two players are going to be Collin Sexton as well as Tim Hardaway Jr. Before we get into it though, make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe if you guys are new, and comment down below your thoughts on the video and your thoughts on the channel in general. Also, turn your post notifications on so you guys will not miss a single video. And yeah, let's get right into it, man. We are very close to 850, and I cannot wait until we get to 900 and eventually we get to 1K. That'll be like our big milestone on this channel, and obviously we want to keep growing, getting bigger and bigger, but the community is getting bigger, man, and I'm really excited for that. So appreciate you guys. Love all the support you guys have been showing, and yeah, let's get right into it. So we're going to be talking about Collin Sexton because Collin Sexton's name has come up in a lot of rumors, and this time it's been with the Heat specifically. Now this is very weird because Collin Sexton's name has been thrown out as far as being on the trade market, but as far as the Miami Heat being interested, this is the first time we're actually seeing something coming from a source, and this source is Adam Barai of 5 Reasons Sports. 5 Reasons Sports, as you guys probably all know, is an outlet that's been covering the Heat for a long time. So this is probably legit. I would take it as it's a legit source. So this is quoting him. So quoting Adam, sources have told me that there is an indeed validity to the idea that the Miami Heat would be interested in trading for Collin Sexton. The Cavs would rather keep Sexton and extend him, but understand that this price tag might be too high for them to accept. Now the second part is kind of interesting to me because they were just talking about how they wanted to ship him off and trade him 2 weeks ago, and now they're saying that they want to keep him and extend him. So that contradicts itself. So I don't know about that part, but there probably is some truth that the Miami Heat are interested in Collin Sexton, considering that he fits a lot of things that we lack. Number one, he would probably come in and be our best guard defender behind Victor Oladipo if he's still on this team. And number two, he'd probably be our best guard scorer. Definitely be our best guard scorer, as he averaged almost 25 points per game on 48% efficiency and 37% from the three-point line. So Collin Sexton would come in and immediately change this team. Would he be the answer to our problems? Probably not, but he would fix some of the things that we are lacking. And like we have to take some risks on some of these guys, and Collin Sexton is a guy that I would love to take a risk on. Now, the proposed trade that has been suggested by a lot of these outlets, people, you know, on Twitter that I've seen, and the trades that have supposedly been talked about between the two teams, the Heat and the Cavs, are the a trade centering around Collin Sexton and Kevin Love going to the Heat for Tyler Hero, Andre Iguodala, and another player, and this player is likely to be a young asset, so either Precious Achiuwa or KZ Okpala or someone in that realm is likely to be the third asset, the third piece of this trade. Now let's dissect this trade. Let's assume that the Cavs are asking for Precious as a third piece. So we have Hero, we have Iguodala, and we have Precious as the three pieces going from the Heat to the Cavs, and then we have Sexton and Love. Now Sexton, bona fide, you know, bucket. He's a guy who can score the ball all 3 levels. He can play defense. Off ball is a little bit suspect, but his on ball defense is certainly on point. Kevin Love, second guy, just committed to Team USA. Hasn't really been the same Kevin Love that we have been seeing over these past couple of years. He's been on the decline, if you want to say it. But what a lot of people have to keep in mind is, if we trade for Kevin Love, we're not asking him to be the all-star, the Kevin Love from Minnesota, or even the Kevin Love from the first few years of Cleveland. We're asking Kevin Love to be an upgrade over all the power forwards we've had in the past. Now, I think he can do that. Trevor Ariza, as good as he is, I still think Kevin Love can be more serviceable than him. Jay Crowder is going to be tough. He was really good for us. I don't know if Kevin Love can match that intensity, but as far as the shooting is concerned, if we get his shot right, shot for shot, I do think he could space the floor better than Jay. Myers Leonard for sure. I think Kevin Love could be an upgrade over him. Kelly Olynyk is a question mark. You know, he was a bit inconsistent with us, but he had the talent. And then Mo Harkless for sure. I think Kevin Love could be better than him. So all we're asking Kevin Love to be is a perfect fit next to Bam, which I think he can be. And listen, this is the thing about Kevin Love, right? A lot of people are quick to say he's washed, he's this, he's that. We have to look at what happened with Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin was playing with the Detroit Pistons in a situation which was terrible for him. He was a guy that, you know, was getting paid a lot, but he was on a team that was god awful. The Detroit Pistons, as much as, you know, I love their future, were trash last year. And obviously Blake Griffin was not, you know, fully invested in the season. He was not invested in the team. He was clearly trying to look for a buyout. And yeah, we saw once he went to the Nets, people were going crazy because he was dunking the ball, which he never did in Detroit. He was actually playing defense. He was stretching the floor. He was a really big addition for the Nets. He played some amazing defense on Giannis. I think Kevin Love could do the same thing. You know, there was a time where Kevin Love was trying to get out of Cleveland. I remember when there was an incident where he got into it with the coaching staff, and then he threw the ball really hard at Collin Sexton once or something like that because, you know, he was frustrated and he was throwing, you know, temper tantrums in the locker room. Like, he was trying to do his best to get out of Cleveland. And I think that if Kevin Love goes to a situation where it can fit him and, you know, where he's winning, I think that would bring the best out of him. And I think that we're not trading for Kevin Love, and we're not asking Kevin Love to be the Kevin Love from Minnesota or the Kevin Love from the early years from Cleveland. I think that's what people have to keep in mind. When we're trading for Kevin Love, we're just trying to trade for a guy that's going to be able to fit next to Bam. On the other hand, you have Tyler Hero, you have Precious Achiuwa, you have Iguodala. Now, Iguodala, I could not really care less about losing. You know, I think Iguodala is a great mind, great basketball mind. I think his defense is very useful in the playoffs. But this year, he was kind of a black hole offensively at times, and he was kind of a guy that people left wide open to shoot threes, and he was very inconsistent from the three-point line. Shot just about 30% from three, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I'm not too fussed about losing Iguodala, especially if we're getting a guy like Collin Sexton back. Tyler Hero, you know, obviously he's the best player out of these three. It sucks if he has to go, but we have to understand that Tyler Hero is going to be the main trade piece that teams ask for. None of these teams are stupid. No one's going to ask for 35-year-old Goran Dragic or a Kendrick Nunn who's an older player in the NBA, even though he's a second-year player. He's one of the older second-year players. He doesn't have the potential that Tyler has. So Tyler's going to be asked for. So I've come to peace, and I'm comfortable with giving up Tyler. Precious is a guy that I would want to keep in this situation, because I still think if we were able to pull some strings and we were able to keep Precious and give up a KZ or something like that, because I think Precious has potential. I think what we can see with Precious is we'll be able to see everything when he plays for Nigeria this summer, because he is committed to play for Nigeria in the Olympics. So if he gets some playing time for Nigeria, we'll be able to see not only him but KZ and Gabe Vincent. We'll be able to gauge their potential, gauge, you know, what they're made of, because obviously Precious Achiuwa had a very rough rookie season, but I'm not writing him off. Like, I'm not a guy who thinks he's a bust. No way. He was a 20th overall pick. How can you be a bust? If you're the 20th overall pick, that means your expectations are you're going to be a solid role player. And I think in the games that Precious started, what did he average? 15 and 11. So I still think that Precious has immense potential. I just think that he was being used. He was, number one, being used as a center, whereas center is not his position. He's 6'7", 6'8" at best. He's a power forward, small forward, something, if you want to say that. And number two, he didn't even have like an off season. He didn't have summer league. He didn't really have a full camp. He just came in raw. He's a project, and it's going to take time for him to develop. So I would love to keep Precious, but obviously, you know, he doesn't fit the timeline of Jimmy Butler. So I would understand if we gave him up. I'm not too mad at this deal, though. I still think that Collin Sexton is a guy who can help us win now and build for the future, because he's already developed a lot. Kevin Love, interesting. You know, we're going to have to take on his contract. That's the only bad thing about Love. It's the only thing I'm scared of. If we were able to get like a Larry Nance instead of a Kevin Love, I would definitely do this deal. But I don't think Kevin Love would be a bad fit. I think people are very quick to gauge Kevin Love based on these last couple of years in Cleveland, which is rightfully so. Like, that's the last thing we saw of him. We haven't seen anything of him, and that's how I was with when the Nets got Blake Griffin. I was like, oh, he's washed. It wasn't. It's not anything. But it really opened my eyes that if these players get in a situation where they want to be there, they can really be committed and be fully invested in this team. And I think Kevin Love could use a change of scenery a lot. And I think that if he gets a change of scenery, don't be surprised if Kevin Love becomes a serviceable player in this league. So, and I think it'll be great to see Kevin Love in the Olympics, because I want to see what Kevin Love's made of. I want to see what Kevin Love. I want to see how much he still has in the tank. He's on a $30 million contract, which is very hefty. He's wrapped up until 2023. So that's the only bad thing about it, is that this contract situation. If he didn't have this contract, it'd be a lot easier for me to say I'd do this deal. But because with this contract though, it's gonna be tough, because if we have Collin Sexton, who we're gonna have to extend if we trade for him, and then Kevin Love making $30 million for the next 2 years, who else are we gonna be able to sign? Like, we don't really have the room to sign another free agent. So, yeah, especially with Jimmy Butler probably getting his max, I think the only thing we're going to be able to do is probably bring back our restricted guys like Duncan and maybe K-Nunn. I don't even think we're going to be able to bring one of them back. I think it's going to have to be Duncan, and then K-Nunn's probably going to have to get let go to fill the cap or something like that. But this is gonna take up a lot of our cap space. But it might be worth it. It might be worth it to take on his contract to get a guy like Collin Sexton, especially because this year's free agency class is not that stacked compared to next year's and the year after that, when Kevin Love is actually a free agent. So it's a 2-year rental with Love, which is quite a while. But if you want to try out something different, which we desperately need, in the Heat system, he could be a guy who can play next to Bam, or he could be like a backup guy who could give you good minutes off the bench. So I'm not too fussed about it. But let me know your thoughts on this deal, because this is a deal that has been thrown around. And then the last thing that I have to say about this deal is Adam Barai actually said that watch for a trade with Sexton or something like that. If it happens, it's probably going to happen closer to draft time. So after the finals, it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to happen either during the draft, right after the draft, or right before the draft. So keep your eyes peeled for that. That's for Collin Sexton. And man, that was a lot of talking for Collin Sexton. So hopefully you guys understood everything, and hopefully you guys got my breakdown of it. But let's move on to the second player very briefly, which is Tim Hardaway Jr. Now, I'm not going to spend as much time as I did on Collin Sexton on this one, because Tim Hardaway Jr. Apparently is very intrigued and is very excited with the possibility of playing for the Miami Heat. This is also from 5 Reasons Sports correspondent Greg Slivander. And whether you want to take this with a grain of salt or not, it's up to you guys. I'm going to choose to believe it, because I don't think it's that far-fetched. Tim Hardaway Sr. played for the Heat. He's a Heat legend. It wouldn't be that far-fetched to think that Tim Hardaway Jr. would be intrigued by playing for the team that his dad played for. He would try to follow in his father's footsteps. So, Tim Hardaway Jr., man. I mean, let's talk about Tim Hardaway Jr., because Tim Hardaway Jr., I think, really made himself a household name during these playoffs. He was amazing, I thought, during the Clippers series. Probably their second best player behind Luka. Averaged 17 points per game on just catching and shooting the ball. And I think that's what he's gonna do if he comes to the Heat. I don't think he's gonna be a scorer. He can score the ball, but I don't think he's gonna be a guy that we give the ball to and say, get us a bucket. That's not who he is. He's not Terrence Ross. He's not Norman Powell. And the reason I bring up these two names is because I have used these names in the past to compare them to Tim Hardaway Jr. But Tim Hardaway Jr. is a flat-out shooter. That's what he is. That's what he has been. Obviously, in Michigan, when I watched him at Michigan, because I was a Michigan fan before, I'm not at Michigan for college, but I still keep up with them. Tim Hardaway Jr. was a flat-out bucket. I saw him in the Rising Stars game or whatever it was called back then. Him and Dion Waiters were going at it. So watch that video on YouTube. If you guys have not watched that video, it's really entertaining. It's Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dion Waiters going back and forth during the rookie-sophomore game or something like that. And They were going at it. He's always had that, ability to get hot. And when he gets hot, he's very hard to stop. So Tim Hardaway Jr. is a great asset on any team. Every contending team would love him, man. So, man, Tim Hardaway Jr., I think would be a great fit on this team. I think he would be an amazing fit on this team. These are my only two problems with this player. I mean, not with the player, with this deal. Number one, Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to want a ton of money. I would not be surprised if he wants 20 plus. The way he's played in this season and this playoffs, someone's going to give him a bag. And I hope that we do not pay Tim Hardaway Jr. a boatload of money just to be a catch and shoot player. I think 20 max is what I would pay for Tim Hardaway Jr. Number two, if Duncan Robinson is getting matched by the Heat, if a team pays him 18, 19, or 20, and if the Heat match it, I do not want Tim Hardaway Jr. on this team. Because Tim Hardaway Jr. and Duncan Robinson are essentially going to be here for the same exact thing, and that's to shoot the ball. Both of them on the court at the same time, I don't know how that's going to work, because if you want them to play 2 and 3, are you putting Jimmy Butler at 4? So I don't know. I think it's one or the other for me. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is a great player. He would fit our team amazing, but I think he would be a Duncan Robinson backup. If Duncan does not resign, if we do not match the rights to Duncan's contract, I think that's when we go in for a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. So Tim Hardaway Jr., I think, is a guy who's going to be coveted by a lot of people, but I think he should be a guy that's a Duncan Robinson replacement. I don't think he should be a guy that Duncan Robinson is. I don't think he should be a guy that we bring along with matching Duncan Robinson, because we're going to be spending, 20 for Duncan and 20 for Tim? That's $40 million for two guys who are just basically the same player on the Heat. And I'm not saying Tim Hardaway Jr. and Duncan Robinson are the same exact player, but on the Heat, they will be catch and shoot players. They're not going to be creating their shot and doing this and that, because Jimmy and Bam will be having the ball in their hands. So I wouldn't hate it, but I think it would only work if Duncan Robinson was not re-signed. That's my opinion on Tim Hardaway. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it at as far as Tim Hardaway Jr. is concerned. Let me know your thoughts on Tim Hardaway Jr. and let me know your thoughts on the Collin Sexton trade and all that all that debacle about Collin Sexton. Let me know what your thoughts are about that. As usual, man, make sure y'all drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. This was a really fun video to do. I actually thought I gave a pretty nice breakdown of these two players. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, man. I'll see you guys later as always. Peace.